thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. We have the fourth World Communications Forum Summit online. Why? Because of COVID. And we had 3 of them during this awful pandemic. And we were very, very much eager to make this year's forum offline or in person, which we were doing since 2009. Unfortunately, we were about a little bit late, and the Davos hotels went out of the season, majority of them closed. So I'd like very open and official to announce that the Davos Communications Summit 2025 will happen next year, 2025, April 9th. So you all will receive an invitation and the special discounts and all the benefits because you've been with us for the past 4 years at the online forums. World Communications Forum Association was founded 2009 in Davos, Switzerland. And since then, we are operating sometimes bad, sometimes good, sometimes excellent, sometimes not very much. But at the end of the day, this is one of the many organizations, of course, alongside with unbeatable PRovoke or the Holmes report, and alongside with ECO and the IPRA and many other communities, CIPR, PRCA, of course, which are doing very good job on the market. And I would like to quote my favorite mentor, Paul Holmes, saying that the more communities, the better. And I do believe this, that more communities, regional, global, national, the better, because our business is so dynamic that it's changing sometimes even overnight. In these days, with the new media, with artificial intelligence, with many other details. So the more forums, the more meetings, the more conferences, of course, they enrich us and make from us more professional. We have hundreds of members in the World Communications Forum, all of them paid. I thank them very, very much. And we cover 35 countries from 5 continents: Europe, North America, South America, Asia, and Africa. And we launched recently a couple of services which are amazing. One of them is PR Agency Tracker. So all the members, they are inside the database that someone who would like to find a public relations service partner in Czech Republic, in Brazil, or in Japan, or Korea, or whatever, can find a PR partner. Then, of course, among services, we have our Speakers Bureau. So each of the members are put or are part of a Speakers Bureau. So every partner or every company or every conference, forum, workshop, if they want to find a good, reliable speakers, then they come to our Speakers Bureau and they can reach the possible speakers directly and to book them. So of course, we have all those awards. Here is the sample of the Davos Communications Award. Now we are running the digital awards. So each of you who would like to compete with the rest of the competitors all over the world for the digital awards have a chance to win this plaque and to post it proudly on Instagram or on Facebook or on LinkedIn or TikTok, whatever. So I would like to open today's Davos Communications Summit 2024 and would like to give the floor to our keynote speaker, the highly estimated professional, again, mentor, teacher, and good friend, Paul Holmes. Paul, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Max. Is there somebody there who can share my presentation with?
Absolutely.
There we go. Okay, so those of you who have seen me before will know that I don't actually like slides very much. I usually do not speak with a presentation. But there's a lot of information to get through in a short period of time. And I'm hoping that having a slideshow will help me to move through it quickly, share the information in a way that you can all take in, and also help me not get off track, because I do have a tendency to sort of wander off in strange directions as I speak. So this will hopefully be a little more focused than usual. I need to make another disclosure, which is that all the images in this presentation were created by AI. I just basically wrote a prompt and asked for a background for a presentation on AI, and this is what AI thought was appropriate. And then finally, I should make you all aware that I am not in any way an expert on AI. So you're not going to get a deep dive into the technology. You're not going to get a comparative analysis of all the different tools that are out there. You are going to get a very quick, down and dirty overview of what I think all of this means for the public relations profession over the next 2 or 3 years. Next slide, please. The first thing I want to say about the PR industry is that we are really bad at new technology. We are historically, I think, an industry of technophobes, or at least of late adapters. I remember when we first started to automate media monitoring. The younger people on the call will be surprised to learn that PR agencies used to employ an army of people who sat around with newspapers and scissors and would cut out every article that mentioned one of their clients. And I remember a conversation that I had when this began to be automated by somebody who was horrified. And I said, why would you be horrified? Instead of having these 10 people with scissors, you can have one computer do it all in about 5 minutes. And he said, yes, but these 10 people with scissors are all billable, and I can pass along the cost of paying them to the client and mark it up and make more money. And if you tell me that I can do that in 20 minutes with a computer, I'm going to lose billable hours. This is the way that we have thought about technology in the past, not how can it help me do my job better and help me focus on more value-added things, but what will it do to the amount of billable hours that I can charge? The birth of the internet saw PR people sitting around and discussing what the internet was. And I remember going to a meeting of WPP where the advertising people said, this is great. We can put pop-up ads everywhere and people will love it. And the direct people were saying, we can use this for direct mail and we can target direct mail to everybody individually. And the design people were all saying, no, it's a design medium and it's all about creating a flow so that people are guided through your site with design. And the PR people just sat there taking notes. Nobody suggested that it was a community building medium, that it was a relationship building medium, that it was, and it turned out to be, a PR medium. We were late to that discussion. And Max will, I think, remember that I was in Davos 10 years ago and asked everybody, do you have a chief data officer? And I don't know, maybe about 7 hands in an audience of 150 went up. And I made the case that we needed to be in the forefront of data. PR has lagged other disciplines in this regard, and we're lagging now. Only 20% of respondents to a survey by the Planck Center said that they felt that their communications teams were advanced in AI. That needs to be closer to 100 if we're going to take advantage of all the opportunities that I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. Next slide. So the conversation about AI has been going on at conferences that I've attended for at least 3 years now, mostly 4 years. And the conversation has mostly been around generative AI and its ability to do some of our job for us. And if that's the conversation you've been following, and if you've been using the various chat GPT models to do some of your writing for you, you've probably been horribly disappointed. I did a quick piece of research about 3 weeks ago where I asked ChatGPT, who is Paul Holmes, the founder of PRovoke Media. I got some very interesting information about my creation of PRovoke Media, which was entirely accurate. And then I found out 2 things that were surprising to me. The first was that I was dead. Apparently I died in 2009. And the second is that I was married with 2 children and enjoyed hiking and camping. I'm married with no children, and I can't remember the last time I went hiking and camping. And this told me something interesting about ChatGPT and AI generally. First of all, it told me that it's not, this use of AI is not ready for prime time. The second thing it told me is that all of AI seems to have been programmed by white men, because when AI doesn't know something, it just makes it up out of whole cloth and then states it with absolute confidence as if nobody could possibly disagree. It is completely incapable, as far as I can tell, of saying, I don't know. And that, I suspect, is the influence of people who look like me, old white men who have never learned to say, I don't know. So I'm not surprised that a lot of people are looking at Gen AI and finding it particularly unimpressive right now. Will AI take my job? I don't think is a particularly interesting or challenging question. It will change all of our jobs. Our job is to figure out how to use it to make our work life easier and more fun and more challenging and more exciting. And I hope, again, over the next few minutes, I'll give you an idea of how we can accomplish that. Next slide, please. So the next thing you need to know is that AI is already having a huge impact on the news business. 45% of journalists use AI in their work, at least sometimes. 5% use it often. It's being used for research. It's being used for drafts and outlines. I have to say that my experience in that regard has been incredibly disappointing, but there is no question that media organizations are working extremely hard to find ways in which they can use AI in a labor-saving way. Next slide. Journalists are, not surprisingly, extremely concerned about this. They are concerned about the inaccurate information problem that I mentioned earlier, what people call hallucination. AI still hallucinates far too much to be reliable in this way. They are worried about bias, they are worried about quality, and they are worried about job displacement. The main thing that they're worried about, the thing that I think we need to understand and be concerned with, is that top one, the no human supervision, and more importantly, the no human interaction. Newsrooms are going to face a choice here. They are either going to rely more and more on AI and algorithms to generate stories, or they are going to double down on trusted relationships, on building credibility and trust into their content, and in establishing the kind of personal relationships that we know leads to better coverage of the subjects and the companies that we represent. My guess is that most of them are going to choose algorithms over people and speed and volume of content over quality. We need to understand that that change is happening, and we need to adapt our processes so that we can deal with both of those things. Next slide. We also need to understand the disinformation explosion that is already happening is going to get worse and worse and worse over the next few months. When executives and other leaders in Davos, the other Davos, the little one that they do as a prelude to this meeting, were asked earlier this year what they thought the biggest global risks were, misinformation and disinformation was the #1 global risk. Next slide. Here's why. These are just 3 stories from the last 3 months that have been generated by AI and have created crises for the companies involved. The first is a company called Circle K, which is a gas station and retail company in the UK that was victim to a claim that it was being sued for discrimination because it refused to hire convicted sex criminals. This was simply not true, but it blew up on social media, as all of these things do, and the company was forced to respond. The second is the claim that McDonald's was creating Happy Meals for Satan worshippers. Again, completely untrue, but AI generated images convinced lots of people on social media that it was true. The third image is of a pregnant Ken doll, which is an indication of how woke Barbie had become. It was now making Ken pregnant to appeal to the woke mob. This again, a completely false story. But this is evidence to me that disinformation is not just about COVID vaccine. It's not just around climate. It's not just around big political issues. It is a problem that can rear up for any company at any time, which leads me to the next slide, which is that we need to be prepared for all of these questions, and we need to make sure that our companies become the trusted voices when it comes to AI. 52% of Americans are more concerned than excited about AI. Only 10% are more excited. 83% of them don't trust the companies that are developing AI, and 72% of them don't trust the government to regulate AI. Those 2 last items sound similar, but they're not. They don't trust the companies because they think the companies will be cynical and exploitative and will use AI in ways that are dangerous. They don't trust the government because they think it's too stupid or too ill-informed to regulate AI properly. I would suggest that that means that your companies, whatever field that they are in, need to become trusted voices for the way in which you're using AI and for the way in which AI regulation in your market takes shape. We need to partner with government to make it smarter. We need to partner with technology companies to really understand the issues that we're talking about. But it's going to be companies in retail and healthcare and energy and financial services that people turn to for trusted information. And you need to become the trusted voices on this subject. Next slide, please. You need to address all of the ethical issues that are being considered right now by companies developing and using AI. Kirk Stewart used to be the CEO of MSL, one of the largest international PR networks, and he used to be the chief communications officer at Nike. He's a very, very senior person in our industry, and he works now with the Annenberg School at the University of Southern California. He identified about 12 ethical concerns. These are the 6 that I think we have to be prepared to address in everything we do. The first is that AI is and can be as biased and as unfair as the people who program it. If it's programmed by people who think that only white men have great ideas, it will be biased towards white men. If it is overcorrected by people who want to make sure that it isn't biased towards white people, and we saw this recently with Google, it can produce some incredibly off-putting and bizarre results. It needs to be taught to be unbiased and fair. People who are using AI need to understand the privacy or privacy concerns of people on the other end. There is a huge amount of data being gathered, and we need to make sure that we have the permission to do that. People need to be transparent and accountable. They need to address concerns about job displacement. They need to make the case that yes, jobs will be lost, but other jobs will be created, and they need to follow through on those promises. They need to address concerns over security and misuse, that AI can be used for malicious purposes, cyber attacks, deep fakes, disinformation. And they need to address the environmental impact because there's growing evidence that the computational power needed to drive AI is eating up vast amounts of resources and exacerbating global warming and climate change and extreme weather events. All of those are issues that your companies and your clients need to be prepared to talk about as AI becomes a bigger deal. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk very quickly about the 3 areas where I think we can start to apply AI now. I'm going to move through this fairly quickly. The first and most obvious is content creation. As I said at the beginning, I don't think this is the most interesting opportunity for AI, but I think it is the simplest for people to understand, and the one that even relatively unsophisticated users can get behind immediately. The first thing I'm going to say is that you need to learn or at least experiment with lots of different AI tools. There are 2 or 3 that get a lot of attention, whether it's OpenAI or ChatGPT or Copilot. But the fact of the matter is that there's a plethora of different tools out there. Some of them are better at some things than others. Some of them are better for research. Some of them are better for writing. Some of them are better for image generation. And you need to learn them all and understand which ones meet your needs best. You need to consider that all of these tools should not be used to displace writers and creatives. They most certainly should not be used to infringe on the intellectual property of writers and creatives. And you need to keep, I think, writers and creatives at the forefront of your work and your thinking, even as you use AI more and more. And you need to understand that prompt writing is a special skill that you will have to either hire for or train. I came across in New York earlier this year the first person that I have ever met whose official job title is prompt writer. I made a joke about how in my day, I was a prompt writer because I got all my copy in on time. That is not what it means. What it means is that the ability to write prompts that generate good, usable content, that generate the kind of images you want, is a very specialized skill. You can't do it the first time. It is not as intuitive as it ought to be. It varies somewhat from tool to tool. And you even need to learn the art of prompt writing, or hire people who are growing up with that as an innate skill. However, next slide. What I think is most interesting about AI right now is its ability to help us in strategy, planning, and prediction. In a way, I think this is going to be a holy grail for our industry when it comes to harnessing this technology. The first and most obvious thing is that we have more and better data than ever before, and we can start to use that to mitigate risk and to predict the outcomes of campaigns, messages, and channels. This was brought home to me when I talked to people earlier this year about the Bud Light crisis. Now, I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. For those who don't, Bud Light did an influencer marketing campaign last year that included a trans influencer. And there was a huge backlash from right-wing Americans, from homophobes, for people who think that trans people are an illegitimate part of our community. That really damaged the Bud Light brand. And I saw in the middle of that crisis a very interesting chart, which showed that there was a huge spike around this issue when it first happened, a big spike of social media activity, of social media conversation, of outrage against Bud Light. That spike very quickly began to deteriorate. Then it spiked again. Then it began to drop off again, and then it spiked again. And each one of those spikes happened at the exact time that Bud Light put out a new statement. So then when they put out a statement saying they were going to stand behind the campaign, they got a spike of activity. When they put out another statement saying that they were going to go back to their traditional marketing and focus on the sort of six-pack drinking middle American man that had always been their core audience, there was another spike of negative attention. And the lesson from this was that actually the best strategy for Bud Light would have been simply to shut up and let the conversation die down. That every time they said something, they reignited the conversation. Now, that's interesting in and of itself. But what's really interesting is that AI now is capable of telling you that before you open your mouth. You can't, it's not just a tool that you can use to see what happened when you did something. It's a tool that can predict with uncanny accuracy what will happen the next time you do something. You can test messages, you can test channels, you can test individual influencers to see if they will help or hurt your brand. And you can test everything that you are going to put out into the market before you do it. You can do what we call red teaming, which is have AI create imaginary questions and imaginary criticisms of every policy so that you can be prepared for those questions and criticisms. And that kind of technology is going to be vitally important. The thing that we need to understand about this is just like AI is not going to replace writers and artists and illustrators, it's not going to replace PR counselors or strategists or planners either. We are still going to need the wisdom and experience of senior people like the ones on this conference call, but they are going to be helped by technology to come up with definitive answers or much more accurate answers than we've ever been able to come by before. And that's going to be a huge help to our clients. Next slide, please. Finally, AI is going to help us with better metrics. I just got back from Max's hometown, Sofia. I was there with Stuart Bruce attending the Association of Measurement and Evaluation of Communications annual meeting, AMEC. It was very interesting to me to have that discussion. I think we all know that AVEs are, at least among respectable PR practitioners, dead or dying. I think we also know that there are still clients out there who cling to AVEs as a way to compare their PR outcomes to their advertising outcomes. But among thought leaders in our profession, AVEs are dead. Reach, which is what has replaced AVEs in most places, is simply a vanity metric. And while there are lots of people at the Amex Summit who are coming up with more and more sophisticated tools for measuring reach, the next step is to move away from reach and to focus on impact. And again, AI is going to be incredibly useful in that regard. We are going to move beyond managing reach to managing reputation and relationships. We are going to be able to find correlations between individual activities, individual campaigns, individual messages, and their impact on the reputation of our organization, their impact on the strength of our relationships, and ultimately their impact on value and profitability. And finding things like how much a social responsibility campaign reduces the cost of recruiting key executives is going to be achievable within the next couple of years using AI tools. That brings me to the final slide and the warning that I want to deliver to professionals, which is that AI is going to be massively disruptive. And I'm sorry, I replaced the slide here and gone beyond build or buy. It's going to disrupt the agency model considerably. Agencies around the world are going to have to make the decision, can I invest in building my own AI tools, or do I need to buy from outside? I have to say that meeting with big agencies in New York recently, nearly all of them are investing millions of dollars in building their own tools. I am not convinced that that's the right strategy. I think that a collective tool that is built by an independent third party can have much more data in its large language model, and therefore produce much more important, meaningful results than something that a single agency builds. I can understand why somebody like Edelman with their trust barometer would want to build their own tools and put the data from the trust barometer into those tools. But I think for most people, using third parties that supply the entire industry is the better way forward. New skills are going to need to be developed. I talked about this earlier. The workforce is going to change. Some jobs are either going to go away or be reduced in importance, but other jobs are going to be created. And you need to be ready for that disruption. And you need to find the opportunity in AI. If AI can deliver the kind of things that I was talking about, it will grow our business considerably. And it will also, and this is my final point, change our business and our business model in a way that I think is all for the good. I started at the beginning by talking about how considerations of hourly billing have prevented us from embracing technology and change in the past. This new technology, AI, is going to fundamentally change the way we bill clients. It is going to reduce the number of hours that we work to create new solutions, creative product, content, strategy, messaging, all of those things. And we need to find a way to convert clients from the hourly billing model that dominates our industry right now to a value billing model that links what they pay to the real results that we deliver, that links billing to things like reputation improvement, share value improvement, stronger relationships with key stakeholders. AI will not only enable us to do that, I think it will force us to do that, because if we don't embrace that change, we are going to be doing more and more for less and less, and that's not a viable future. So we need to really develop new models that link the compensation we get from clients to the real value that we deliver. And AI, I believe, is going to help us deliver more, better value. So that's the equation going forward. I hope that in this presentation, which I've been rushing through, I've at least given you a few things to think about, a few reasons to go home and be a little worried about this issue, and a few reasons to go home and be excited about it, because I think it's going to transform our industry in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think the people who are thinking about that now are going to be the people who can take advantage of it in the future. Thank you very much indeed, Max. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you. Appreciate it. It was a great start of the summit today and highly appreciated. We will take a lot of bites from the presentation. And we have now a couple of minutes for questions to Paul Holmes. Do we have any questions? Any of you? Most probably in the chat system. I see someone is writing, or...
You'll have to forgive me. My eyes are bad, so...
Jessica, can you write? Can you read the questions over there?
We don't have questions for now.
We have statements. Okay.
Yeah, there's nice communication going on.
Okay. So we have praises to Paul Holmes. We don't have questions. Okay. Thank you very much, Paul, one more time. And we appreciate your presence, your very strong start of today's discussion. Now we move on to the program, and I would like to give the floor to the first moderator of the first panel after the keynote speaker, Mykolas Katkus, a great friend of mine.
Like cactus, but kind of
Katkus. Mykolas Katkus, who is not cactus. Great friend, great professional. He's the partner of Fabula, Ruth Pedersen Group, and co-founder of RepSense. But let me say a couple of words that we know with Mykolas many, many years. He used to be our Hill and Knowlton guy in beautiful Lithuania, which I love a lot. And he grew up to a very serious player on the market and very well prepared public relations professional and manager. So the title of the panel is AI-driven PR strategies and campaigns, and I have the pleasure to give the floor to Mykolas.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? I just have to do a mic check before starting.
Yes, we can hear you.
Very good, fantastic. So my name is Mykolas. As Max said, I come from Lithuania. I've started what is still the largest and the best, according to the recent awards, public relations agency in the Baltics, called Fabula. And 2 years ago, I left my job. I think I've left like on the 20% working in PR as a consultant and started something new. And the main reason for that was what Paul just described, that I saw the AI shifting in the way we process and understand communications. And I realized that in communications, we don't no longer do clippings, which stick to the as Stuart just wrote, stick to the clippings book, but we still use we still are very technophobic industry, and we are not even, I would say, technophobic, but we're still a very how to say, number-phobic industry. So we hate numbers because numbers most of the time they do not let us tell our story the way we want to tell it. And that's because of many reasons, because there are not too many numbers, because it was difficult to calculate the social sciences before the advent of the new NLP models, which happened just recently. And but the thing that why I left public relations, or at least kind of moved away a little bit for a while, is that I understood that we need to have a better intuition about things which are going on, because then there are so many new media channels, media platforms, social networks, different ways of communicating, different ways how people interact with various content. It's becoming very difficult for one person to kind of, to understand what tomorrow's newspaper will look like. Max told me a story, I think it was like 20 years ago, when Max said that he knew a guy who would bring him to tomorrow's newspaper. Remember, Max, the story? You had a friend who was bringing you tomorrow's newspaper. And and in the evening, you could look at the newspaper and understand what tomorrow will look like for the people who will wake up. And that's a huge benefit. And I think that most of PR practitioners like me who started, I started in 1999, so that's a long time ago. And most of us, we are still thinking about how the tomorrow's newspaper will look like. And I realized that it is very impossible to get your intuition in place these days, because too many narratives, too many channels, too many comments, likes and dislikes, and so on. It's very difficult to understand what will the impact of what you're doing will be to the community. So that's why I started a data company, which dabbles in AI. We're basically doing the same things which Max just described, kind of trying to find better ways how to make the information manageable again. And this is why I'm a PR professional, but I kind of understand AI much better now, how it works and how it doesn't work most of the time, and why it hallucinates and why it's so biased, and that's kind of becoming my bit of a new skill set. But today we have a fantastic panel where we have great practitioners of communications, and moving up from me, there are several things I wanted to talk about with the people in the panel, and there are several questions which it's really interesting and important to me as a practitioner, and as a person who is concerned about what is happening with our profession, how we're going to survive, and how we're going to answer all these questions which Paul just gave to us. So first of all, I'd like to introduce the panelists. So we have Tim Bailey from, he's a co-founder and digital futurist from Purposeful Relationships in the UK. Are you getting?
I am, yeah.
Very good.
Thank you for the
we have Claire
introduction.
Simpson, also from UK. She's the head of growth and from Hard Numbers. We have Bart Delbus from the Netherlands. He's a co-founder of Restation of partner at Newcom. And we also have Jared Mead from USA, and he's a senior public relations strategist. So I would like to start with the number I was given, the way it was written there, and I will start with Tim. Tim already said that he's here. And Tim, the question which your panelists were asked, I'm willing to ask you, and I think it will be like we discussed 3 to 5 minutes. How do you envision the role of AI in transforming the industry, the landscape of how we run and how we do campaigns in the next, like Paul said, 3 years? What key trends from your point we should be fundamentally aware of?
Yeah, thank you. Just a little background about purposeful relations, because I think we will have a slightly different context and angle at which we attach this. We're management consultants who work in the communications area. So we bring a lot of knowledge from outside communications And to echo Paul Holmes's point around technophobia, I think I'd go one further and say actually the main challenge around AI is going to be change management, because it's not really the technology that's the issue, it's the people. And it's being able to get people to understand the benefits and the disbenefits, obviously, of AI, and therefore help organizations to navigate that change. So coming down to the specific question of how it affects campaigns and development, I think it's probably a little too early to be definitive about that. I mean, when we work with clients, we're looking a lot at the innovation opportunities that AI brings. And again, Paul mentioned the possibilities of predictive AI, where you can do, for example, message testing. People may have come across the concept of synthetic panels, which is the idea of being able to put messages in front of personas, artificial people, as it were, and seeing what response you get. I mean, the jury's still out on that. It's early days, but I think there's going to be impacts there. And also to touch on the point about jobs changing, I think again with our clients, we're helping people to get rid of the stuff they don't like. You know, if you work in comms, you probably quite like writing. Probably quite good at it, to be honest, if you're still working in comms a few years after you started. So from that perspective, keep doing the writing, get AI to do all the stuff you don't like.
The stuff we don't like. The ISB.
Admin.
I honestly been rereading David Meister's book. I don't know if you've read it. It's a great consultant on all things consultancy, and he had this fantastic measurement of work, like highly customized or highly complex work, and he kind of was saying that all consultants are in the either apothecaries, even nurses, either brain surgeons, either psychotherapists. So where do you think the AI stands here? I thought it will be somewhere between the nurse and the apothecary, quite down low at the low level. If you're familiar with the concept.
Yeah. It's an interesting way of looking at it. I'd not considered that. I don't know whether anybody else in the panel has a thought on that first.
Okay. So let's take things further. So Claire, you at Holmes, you deal with a lot of complex communication needs, and are you using AI in your work to streamline your workflows? And what's challenging during the integration of it? Can you provide us insights about how it will, in your point, will change the corporate communications in general?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the introduction. Nice to be here, everybody. So yeah, I'm head of growth at Hard Numbers, but I also set up our AI working group within the business. So that group is comprised of a cross-section of employees at sort of most senior level, but also at the most junior and everything in between. And we use that sort of forum to define our approach to using AI, identifying new tools that we can integrate into our workflows, how we can make processes more efficient, but also to set out the policy and the framework for our employees in using both frontier models, but also other AI tools. There was a study from Salesforce that came out towards the end of last year that showed more than 50% of employees use AI tools at work without their employer's knowledge. So, people are using these tools anyway. And actually, the best thing that we can do is set out clear guidelines and frameworks so that people not only feel more comfortable and confident using those tools, but don't feel the need to hide it either, and are happy to be kind of transparent with their colleagues, but also with clients as well. So that's something that we've done as a kind of first step. But also, and this links back to what Paul was saying earlier, we don't use a time-based system for our work. So we don't use timesheets. We don't sell our services based on the time that it takes to deliver them. We sell results. And that means that we have a built-in incentive innovation that a large proportion of other creative services agencies simply don't. I think that will absolutely change over the next few years. If I'd be surprised if other big agencies haven't started to look at that at the moment, but that's something that we've done since we were founded in 2020. And I can see our founder, Daryl, in the audience there as well. So yeah, you know, and that wasn't necessarily with AI in mind. I think the needle and the dial has kind of been moving on that for a long time now, but I think in the face of AI, it's becoming inevitable, and I'm really interested to see how that develops over the next few years.
Okay. Yeah, I think that there's a general feeling that the next 3 years is going to be crucial, and some you know, there might be some bigger changes in the industry than we have kind of experienced in these 2 years when the models were first introduced to a wide public use. But you come from software side, and you know, as a founder of big platforms like Presspage and Newcom, what advancements you know, you think that are most you know, interesting for PR professionals which can be used today? How the platforms and how the systems can be enhanced by you know, by the enhanced communication strategies by using what you do?
Thank you, Nicolas. Hope everybody can hear me. So thanks for this question. I think it's a very interesting question, because I think some of the speakers have alluded to this before in this session. Right now, we have artificial intelligence applications that you have to go to, and then essentially they're standalone systems, and you can put in some data, put in a query, and maybe get some results out of it. The problem with that data and the prompting is that this is not included in some type of integrated workflow. So where we're looking at from a platform perspective, both for you know, a corporate communications platform like Presspage, just as with the enterprise search system, which Nuacom is to say, all right, you know, this data and this prompting needs to really be included in some type of integral workflow. And that workflow means everything with governance, approvals, collaboration, things like that. That's going to be a crucial aspect to really leveraging the power of AI in a lot stronger way than we're doing right now with, you know, your standalone chat GPTs or whatever you're doing. It really is the integration with workflows. The second thing, you know, and that's at the same time one of the huge challenges is data privacy, and therefore data accessibility, to be able to come up with to allow AI to base its results on some kind of data, which is something that Paul alluded to, but I think also Claire alluded to. You know, that's a key thing. If we cannot open the data sources, we're going to be restricted in what AI can do for us, except, you know, making maybe our text a little bit better than it already is. So having that access to data sources and allowing AI to maybe work a lot more on premise, those are going to be key aspects, in my opinion, for software providers in the future when it comes to you know, providing systems, platforms, tools that are really going to enhance the power of AI for the PR comms world.
Thank you. Previously, I was just talking yesterday on the issue of the AI with labor inspections across like European communication managers, labor inspectors, like people who provide labor services in the European Union, and you know, and from one hand, it's very easy to target people, to match people with very clear labor proposals. At the same time, they expressed you know, fear about what will people want to use this data, because you know, if you have a medical card, labor card, and probably, you know, tax card, you can basically, you know, manipulate the person in many ways. We're not, you know, Cambridge Analytica, we never thought about that. So I think that privacy used by using the systems, including the AI, it's probably very important part of the equation. Okay, we will come back to that, I hope, but let's now move to our fourth panelist, and Jared Mead from USA. And Jared, Paul Holmes just shared some of the examples of how fakes can change the public relations, you know, campaigns, and how fakes can damage brands. Are there any good examples of AI integration? Because it seems that we are all we're hearing is kind of negative stories. You know, do you know any sort of successful case studies where AI played a crucial role in a PR campaign? And what were the key factors that contributed to the success?
Sure. Thank you. And as everyone said, I'm happy to be here today. So there's actually two that kind of came to mind over the last few years. The first one, while not necessarily part of a campaign, it was an online sort of ad type video. So for those of you who know the actor Ryan Reynolds, he's also the founder of Mint Mobile. He has his own marketing firm he worked with too. And I'm a huge fan of his work. I think a lot of things they put out are just genius the way they do it. But in 2023, Mint Mobile partnered with OpenAI's ChatGPT. And what they did is they did an experiment where they asked ChatGPT to write a script for an ad. So it generated this real kind of asked it to effective ad copy, as it were, and it resulted in what I would describe as a very humorous script. Reynolds himself described it as mildly terrifying. But this partnership did a really great job of not only creating buzz just for Mint Mobile and for GPT, but it also showcased the possibilities of AI. And in a very humorous way, also shed some light on the challenges and ethical considerations involved in AI. And so I think the reason why this one really worked was, one, done in a very humorous way. So that's always very compelling for viewers. But I think also that it was very upfront and very honest about where AI was at the time, where it still is in some cases, that it can be used as a basis, but relying solely on AI to write copy can be a dangerous venture. So I think that's why it really kind of stuck out to people and was quite compelling. The other one that comes to mind was actually from a few years ago. It's from 2017. And it was a campaign that was done in Italy by Nutella. And they wanted to kind of celebrate how unique and expressive the Italian culture and their Italian customers were. So they actually used AI to generate a limited edition jars for their product. AI created, I believe it was 7 million unique color and pattern combinations. Each one was very unique, had its own special code to customize it, and they became more like pieces of art than they were a container for their product. This ad also included a commercial, online videos, and there was also a digital activation component that allowed consumers to create a customized video that celebrated someone that they knew that was a very unique person. So again, I think this shows how AI can be used in creative ways. But I think the reason why it really resonated again was that it spoke to its customer base, which is what communications is all about. But it really spoke to their customers in Italy who were proud of their uniqueness, their expressiveness, their culture and art. So again, I think it was a really unique way to use AI, and it showed that there are ways to use it that I would say are less have less, I guess I would describe it this way, less minefield. So when you're writing content, if you rely too much on AI, you never know what you may or may not get at this point. But when you're using it to create, color combinations and different patterns, I would say it's a little safer. But I think both of these ad campaigns does a really good job of speaking to the audience that they are intended for, and really struck a note with them.
Thank you. These are really good, interesting examples. Because it seems that like when you hear about AI and communication, you always hear fakes and disinformation and stuff like that. Okay, so we have a first round of things. So I will try to have a next round with additional questions, and I would like to again ask Tim. Tim, you're being described as a digital futurist, and I really want to know. I really want to realize. So. The AI first came to the financial industry, and then it was in early 2000s when because it was very easy to predict things because the numbers were already there. Then it came to logistics industry, which is also very easy to calculate. And we've got a lot of stuff like Uber, like Waze and Google Maps and stuff like that. But we have Waze and Google Maps for I think much more than a decade now. But we still don't have self-driving cars. So, what do you predict? How do you predict the evolution of AI will change how we how further this profession will move up from being, AI being a commodity to AI being something, maybe not in the driver's seat, but something which can get you safely from A point to a point A to point B in the communications profession.
Yeah,
Really ambitious such a push at all.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned self-driving cars, because that's a sociological problem as much as it is a technological problem. And I suspect that in communications there is as much sociology that's going to be have to be addressed as there is the implementation of technology. The reason the other two areas, logistics and finance, worked well with AI is because they have strict processes and they're basically quantitative areas. It's all data. I think, as we've already said, communications isn't like that. So I think they're poor models to look for hints about what the new world's going to look like for communications. I think we can see little views. I mean, when we're working with clients, it's clear that we as an industry are not short of ideas. We don't necessarily need AI to give us ideas. You might need it to happen at speed, or help at speed if you want to do that. But the fundamentals underneath, we don't need AI to do for us. So I think maybe one of the first things that'll happen is people working in comms will be more supervisory, but they'll be supervisory of AI. Something that Stuart and I always say when talking to clients is never ask an AI to do something you can't, because you don't know whether it's right or not. And I think that's a reasonable perspective at this point. I think another place where it will make life more straightforward, and again, Paul alluded to this, is research, but not the sense of asking it questions like Google, but a sense of pointing your AI at a very large document repository or a very large data sets and asking it to go through and find interesting, useful, or even counterintuitive sort of answers out of that. To take that forward. So I think there's a space for AI there in comms. And I think there's and this again is where the challenge to the charging model is, I think there's just a use for it to do lots and lots of really dull things, like taking your media release and making 28 different versions for social media or whatever other channels you're going out to, or being able to summarize long email exchanges, because email is not going to go and die anytime soon in comms, from what I can see, which is probably a pity. But at least there you have massive sort of textual data stores that you can throw summative AI at. So I think there's all these little areas where it will have an almost immediate impact. Where it goes after that, whether you can string them all together under supervision and maybe even without supervision later on, to create, as it were, a PR agency out of a box that's run by AI, I'm not sure. I mean, there are claims that people have these organizations already, but I've not found a client yet who's willing to talk about it.
Honestly, I don't think that there are already. I just I read a lot of this kind of internal AI practitioners material. So the last big news was that Claude Anthropic, the company which makes Claude chat engine, which is one of the best LLM systems around, they now have a new project to understand how LLMs really work. Because it's one of the very big thing in industries that people who create LLMs really not absolutely sure what is happening through these exchanges. So to create LLM and to create an agent, I think it's a much higher and much wider task. I completely agree with you.
Indeed.
Okay. I also wanted to come to us there, and the thing which is really kind of bugging me and interesting me, and I think that Paul has talked about it a little bit, is how we should organize our work in order to understand how AI. So so we just talked with the Tim just said that that probably some of the lower tasks of lower quality work will lower importance work will probably go away. We don't need so many writers adapting press releases to various formats in various countries. At the same time, I have a friend who works with the AI systems in the customer service area, and he said that 95% of times when they install the systems in a big corporation, the people are not going away. They're just starting to serve customers better. So there is a large conserved need for the customers, and automation helps them to serve things better. How do you think, that generally how the processes and the agents should change in order to make these things, to make us more accountable and use this evolution of AI, when you see that to help us all better serve our clients?
Yeah, sorry, just to make sure I've understood the question as well. So that's how our processes and how our mindset should change to better realize the
mindset and the processes. I needed mindset is also very important, but I think that what I was asking you, what do you envision about the processes? How we should process? I think Bart, who is no longer with us, but he just left, had to leave the conference early. Bart has mentioned about that we should change the processes and generally and have to integrate AI in the process of how we do our work.
Yeah. So I think the first place to start is to innovate your existing processes. I'm a big believer that when it comes to AI tools, work out the sort of 20% that's going to get you the 80%, that old sort of adage. So what are the tasks that you are completing on a daily or weekly basis that are still manual or relatively manual, and that by integrating AI tools or realizing efficiencies, you're actually going to see the most impact from. So don't reinvent the wheel, because the problem is that you won't know where to start, and then there's a risk that you won't get started. So identify those processes in your business as a communication function, whether that's admin tasks like meeting scheduling or meeting notes. One of the tools that I still use the most, that I've been using it for nearly a year now, is Fireflies, which is a transcription tool. I'm sure that some of you will be familiar with it, because I do a lot of meetings with prospective clients. We create reverse briefs for them. So I would spend a lot of time writing up notes and running them through our sort of reverse brief template. So rather than, recognizing that was taking up a lot of time, I use a transcription tool to kind of summarize actions from those meetings. And then I can feed that into a reverse brief custom GPT that I've built to get me 80% of the way with a reverse brief for a potential client. And that means that I've probably cut down the time that I spend on that process by about 80%. So really identifying what those processes look like for you and your business, and splitting that out across the different disciplines that you have, which is probably going to look things like content creation, media relations, social content and influencer work, crisis work. AI can be very, very useful for things like scenario planning or stress testing, crisis response. Obviously, human input is incredibly important, especially when it comes to something like crisis. But if you think about those existing processes and that you will go through in each of those areas, that's where you can overlay AI tools to realize efficiencies in each. The other thing to do is decide on the approach. So whether you want to take a top-down approach rather, or a bottom-up approach. And there are pros and cons to both of those. If you have somebody really senior kind of leading the charge in your business, and I think we're seeing that in a lot of large corporates where you have a sort of head of AI or a director of AI that's been brought in. The benefit is that you have accountability. Everything is going through that one person, and ultimately, you can set kind of KPIs and targets for that person. But at the same time, you can get backlogged through that person as well. So that can actually be a barrier to really transforming processes across the board, across an organization at any sort of scale and speed, which, given the pace of change in AI, can actually be a real negative. Then you've got a bottom-up approach, which is similar to the approach that we've taken with the AI working group. But the risk there is that when it becomes everybody's job, it's nobody's job. So how do you manage that? So I think looking at the process that you've already got, and then deciding on an approach, whether that is top down or bottom up, ideally probably incorporating an element of both, and trying to mitigate the potential risks of whichever approach you choose to take, would be what I'd say in terms of integrating AI into existing workflows and how we change our mindset as well as our processes.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting answer. So probably we will still have to experiment with our organizations a little bit and see which approach works best. And I think that there's a lot of already existing tools. Okay, Jared, I want to ask you a question about what Paul has mentioned. So Paul realized his, what to say, he told about his surprise by meeting a prompt engineer as a profession. While I also met while working with a financial institution in New York, I also realized that they have we don't have communications person because we are traders, but we have a mean communications person who's sitting in Reddit and understanding all the news which are coming back because the prices of the shares are changing based on Reddit, and that's well known from GameStop and other things. So mean communication engineers, mean communications person is already a profession, which is also there. But coming back to our profession, what kind of skill do you think we should acquire? Should AI be something each of us learn a little bit, but step by step, or should we have something like a senior AI person, or should we organize some sort of trainings, or just hire people who have some sort of understanding how to use AI tools and generally how the AI works? What's your vision of the future in this case?
Yeah, I think with AI, it's no different than any other tool that we've, has come along through the years of public relations, whether it be social media or anything else that was new at the time. There may be people that come along who specialize in using that tool, but I don't think that is an excuse for all of us PR practitioners to kind of not learn how to use that tool. So same as social media, AI, I think everyone should have some sort of skill level in using it. As Paul mentioned, just kind of feeding information into AI to get what you're looking for is going to be a skill. So I think we all need to learn how to use AI, how to be able to input that data to make sure that we're getting something back that we need. I think we need to understand the ethics and the legal issues around using AI. So I really think it is a responsibility for anyone in communication, in PR, to gain as many skills in that area as possible. Again, there may be people who specialize that different agencies will hire to kind of oversee that area, as we do with social media and other things, but I think it's still a skill set that we all need to have. So I definitely think, as Paul mentioned, we kind of have to, for those of us, and it sounds like a lot of the people on this call have already surpassed this, but for those of us who have not, we have to get over that fear of AI and what it is, and really kind of, jump in the deep end of the pool, as we say, and learn as much as we can, figure out how to use it, how to again, ethically use it, and to be those leaders kind of pushing out there the best way to use this as a new tool. But again, also understanding it is a tool. It's not something that we're just going to, kind of rely on to do the work for us. It's just another tool that we're using to get the best communication, the best PR that we can. We are ending up, and I just want to ask you, what are your guilty pleasures? So what are your tools you're using besides maybe you're using ChatGPT, and how you're using it? Can you give us some examples of how you're doing it yourself now? Yes.
I mean, maybe have a guilty pleasure, like like a chatbot or a virtual mentor or something like that.
Yeah, so the tools that I use the most right now is I use for my kind of on the admin side, my calendar and keeping up to date client meetings, that sort of thing. I use a platform called Motion, which has an AI component. So there's various things that I kind of want to make sure are included in my day. And so AI will actually move those around if they don't have specific deadlines around meetings that will come up on my calendar. So I'm not constantly going in trying to shift things around, but AI will actually do that in my calendar for me. It'll see that I put in a new client meeting, which might have been at a point where, I wanted to, take some time away to maybe answer some emails. It'll take that task of answering emails and move it somewhere else on my calendar to make sure I still have time to do it that day, but it doesn't kind of block up my calendar. So that's one thing I use. Another is with Grammarly. I do use Grammarly when I'm writing. Sometimes I'll write something and it sounds really good to me, but maybe there's just, one component as far as like I want it to sound a little more inspirational or something like that. So I'll ask Grammarly for suggestions. I will say, using that, probably 9 times out of 10, I don't like the suggestion, but it kind of spurs another thought or kind of creates another avenue in my mind that I can take my writing. So again, they're not tools that I rely on to do the actual work, but it's just a way, especially when you get to that point, I'm sure we've all experienced writer's block where you're just trying to get past that, it kind of helps spur that creativity sometimes. So those are probably the two that I use on a daily basis right now.
Okay. We are wrapping up with the discussion now. Tim, any last words and any guilty pleasures with AI? Maybe you're creating songs with Suno or videos with Kling. What's your guilty? I just created a post-punk song with Suno. It sounded actually quite nice.
As a musician, I'm quite offended by Sumo.
I'm also a musician, so I'm not offended, but I just finished my album and I had to do something.
Nicholas is a great singer. I was at one of his concerts recently in Vilnius. He's a great singer. A little bit sad, a little bit long, deep blues, but
I
great voice.
Yeah, thank you. Just to address the question. It's an area which is personal agents. I think that's where I'm experimenting at the moment, and I have a very large server sitting in my dining room, keeping my house warm. That I'm running an open source LLM on, trying to get it to become an intelligent agent, and failing miserably at the moment. But that'll be what I play with, I think, for about the next 3 or 4 months, until somebody offers me a $20 a month subscription to do it far better than I've managed to do.
And any last words you wanted to say about the discussion? Okay.
Can we conclude the discussion, Nicholas?
Yeah. So let's conclude the discussion, and the last was from Claire and Tim, and we will be able to finish that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any last words from you? Any last words from you?
I was just going to say, I think PR and comms, we don't have a great track record when it comes to getting ahead of innovation and embracing new technology. You don't have to look at sort of influencer marketing and SEO to see where we missed the boat in the past. But I think the difference with AI is that actually there's a lot of talk about people in technical roles as prompt engineers. That the area where I'd maybe challenge Paul a little bit from his point earlier is that LLMs are trained to talk like human being. So actually you don't always get the answer that you want first time or second time or even third time. And as communicators, we talk to clients, we talk to external stakeholders who can be tricky and don't always give you that sort of thing that you want first time, and we have to work around that. And it's something that Ethan Mollick talks about in his book Co-Intelligence, which is a great intro to artificial intelligence. But actually there's a real opportunity for people from more creative backgrounds to get better results out of AI than perhaps people from technical roles. And I think that's something to keep in mind as we talk about all of this stuff, because we do tend to put ourselves down a little bit.
Thank you very much. And I give back the microphone to Max. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, Nicholas, and thank you, Lithuania. We really appreciate. Now we move to the next topic, modern PR in a digital age. I would say also we can talk about digital PR in the modern age. So the way you want to do it, just I delegate to Stuart Bruce and his great team, Daryl, Mayan, Laura, Mary Beth, Imogen, one of two, and Clarissa. So Stuart, it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maxim, for that introduction. Well, it's certainly been a kind of fascinating conference so far. I think kind of my kind of takeaways is it was quite interesting that Paul started by talking about how slow the PR and communications industry is to innovate. And I think and then Claire kind of also kind of touched on that. I think that's one of my kind of constant frustrations. So I'm a kind of co-founder of Purposeful Relations alongside Tim Bailey. And our purpose is to help PR and comms teams, whether that's in-house or agencies, to innovate and to change and improve. And I constantly think that the market's going to dry up, and that eventually the PR industry will get the message and actually get on board and start changing and evolving and adopting new ideas rapidly, but they never do. So I think that kind of, and it was quite interesting, just, one of the things that we've found is that working with people is that in-house teams are moving much more rapidly than most PR agencies are. So when Claire was talking about what she's doing at Hard Numbers and the team there, they're the exception. There are kind of some firms as innovative and forward-thinking as they are, but not as many in our experience. We're working with some that are, but in-house, they're much more kind of open to the idea of investing in this. So it's going to be quite interesting. So I just want to kind of briefly start by kind of introducing the panel. So I'm going to kind of go around them all in turn and ask each of them just to say kind of 30-second intro about kind of who they are and what they do. So I'm going to start off by asking Mayan Lee to introduce herself.
Thanks, Stuart. Hi, everyone. So I'm Mayan Lee. I'm based in Vietnam. I'm regional country manager of Global PR Hub. It is a PR agency. We focus on our IMC's project, but mainly for branding and communication activities. Hi, everyone. Very nice to join the meeting today.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And next, I'm going to ask Mary Beth West to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. And Stuart, thanks so much for the opportunity to join everyone. I'm Mary Beth West. I am in the United States. I've been in the public relations industry for about 30 years. About 25% of that experience has been on the corporate side, the remainder mostly on the agency and consulting side. And really enjoy serving with WCFA and with Maxim. And it's just great to see everyone today. And I'm excited about this conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And next, Laura Baxter, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Stuart. Yeah, I'm Laura Baxter. I'm located in Germany, and I'm a founder of the Voice for Leadership and of the company also Castlemount Media. With the Voice for Leadership, I work with executives on their leadership presence, on their communication skills, and on their on their presentation as well, how they can actually present themselves to their teams, et cetera. And Castlemount Media is a publishing company. So with Castlemount Media, we work very closely with different public relations companies. So I'm more on the customer side than on the public relations side itself. And to help our authors really get their word out there and to make sure that they're being covered to the best of our ability as far as public relations go. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And next, Clarissa Muir.
Hi, my name's Clarissa Muir. I'm from Johannesburg in South Africa. I lecture at the University of Johannesburg. A lot of my research is on purpose, sustainability, and how we build brands in this digital age. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then we have Daryl Sperry from the UK.
Hi, my most important job is that I'm dad to Halia and Hudson, but my second most important job is that I co-founded and run Hard Numbers, a performance-driven marketing and communications agency. I had a long career in business development, running sales and marketing for Precise, MediaWorks, then Hotwire, and I decided to set up my own business to bring a sales-led approach to PR and marketing, marrying killer creative to commercial outcome, always doing best-in-class measurement of what we do.
Thank you, Daryl. And I loved your most important job. I'm going to... and finally, Imogen Osborne.
Hello, hopefully you can hear me. I'm actually outside today at the Women's Prize for Fiction. But in real life, I run the Pulse business, which is a real-time insight business. And we work with PR and comms agencies, helping them measure client satisfaction. And then we also run a number of bespoke pulses across different stakeholder communities, one of which is the PR and comms growth tracker, which we use to track and monitor the things that are driving growth across the sector, and that may well be AI and any other pertinent topic in relation to growth.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, we have some discussion topics that were kind of listed on the agenda that I'm sure everybody's seen, but we don't necessarily need to stick to those. But what I did want to do is to just kind of kick off and touch on each of them. So I'm going to ask kind of one person just to kind of share their initial thoughts on the topic. And then if other people have got some pertinent points to make, then kind of you just kind of unmute yourself and come in after the first person. Otherwise, we'll move straight on to the next topic, because that also leaves us time to answer some of the questions from the audience, but also for you all to have an opportunity to make some of the points that you think are really important about kind of modern PR or about what you've heard kind of earlier in the day. So I'm going to start by asking, asking Mary Beth West just to talk about kind of some of the latest techniques for online reputation management.
Okay, great, Stuart. Thank you. I think that the genesis of effective online reputation management really has to start with the research piece. And obviously, I think online monitoring and this ongoing opportunity to collect data and insight about what others are saying about you and engaging in a very good listening process to that is very, very important. I think in light of all of the digital monitoring technology tools that are now available, and I know that we've talked about a few of those here on this call on the AI piece, but I think the value of PR is in that human factor aspect of taking that data and making sense out of it and really interspersing within that an understanding of what the analysis of that data really means to the brand, really means to the C-suite, and certainly means to the boardroom as they're seeking to manage much more large-scale business implications and business and competitive direction for the enterprise. So, we're talking about there's a proactive piece and there's a reactive piece. And I think that it's important to have a strong proactive strategy about what your online monitoring practice is. I think that companies that are involved in controversial industry sectors or that are themselves risk prone, they have to have that good blocking and tackling game on their online monitoring to be sure that they are indeed reacting quickly to things like disinformation and false commentary out in the public domain. But they also have to be fully informed and compliant with this overarching proactive strategy too, as to how they're going about collecting data about what others are saying about their organization and responding to it. And the last thing that I'll say, there are a number of different techniques. I mean, I think we all know about, all of this online monitoring and reporting back to management, culling of coverage in effective ways, and of course, integrating these monitoring insights into what you're going to then turn around and be able to say in messaging going forward. But the last thing I'll say is that I think that online monitoring for the brand has to involve a bit of a compliance function between say-do disconnects that exist out there. Are people criticizing the brand or saying things about the brand that are actually legitimate criticisms? And in PR, we have to be able to take that criticism back to management and forge a conversation about how are we going to bridge a gap in how we are performing based on what our brand promise is. So Stuart, back to you on that.
Brilliant. Thank you for that contribution. Lots and lots of really interesting points there, but kind of two that I kind of really picked up on were your kind of mention of kind of misinformation and disinformation, which Paul also highlighted as being one of kind of the chief concerns. And I think that's one of the things we're finding as well, is helping clients to kind of understand the risks there and kind of work out how they're going to respond to that, because this isn't something that's going to go away. It's kind of the new world order that we all need to live with and respond to. And I think with this year being the kind of the year of elections, it's becoming kind of particularly important. We've already had the kind of the big elections in India and South Africa, to name but two. We're in the midst of one in the United Kingdom at the moment, and we've got kind of the US elections still to come. We've just had the European elections. So I think but it's interesting how that impacts not just on politics, but actually on corporates, but not even just large corporates. It can be smaller businesses and individuals. And the other kind of interesting point you made was that whole kind of use of data for insight piece, that it's not something you do after the event, but actually it's something we do to constantly keep learning. And that seems the perfect segue to bring in Mr. Data and Numbers himself, Daryl.
Thanks, thanks very much. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, actually, about that point there about measurement should be done throughout a campaign rather than just at the end. You know, the thing that people always say about accountants is they just bayonet the dead. And it's kind of the same thing about if you save your measurement and evaluation of what you're doing until right at the end of a campaign, you're not informing the activities that you're undertaking through a campaign to improve and optimize and get better results. So that's why we, for all of our clients, have a Data Studio dashboard that we give to them, where we bring together data from our own CRM system that we use to outreach to all of our journalists or influencers or folks on our clients' behalf, together with data from their Google Analytics, so we can then see in real time what's driving media interest, what's driving coverage, what's driving traffic, and then what's driving conversions for our clients. I think the other things about using data to inform PR strategy, you know, understanding what the customers search for when they search for your client or your organization's product or services, and then using that to inform your thinking and understanding what pages address those needs or products or services or requirements on the client's website. What are the trending topics that journalists are writing about? What are people searching for around those topics? And what are people posting about online? And then how can we hook into these things? And again, just, you know, using data to inform PR strategy, having a database for outbound media engagement. I find it hilarious that PR agencies say their most valuable asset is their relationships with journalists. So the next question is, well, what is your system of record for those relationships? To which they would say a spreadsheet that we download from Roxhill or Gorkana, saved on a server somewhere for our client, right? That's not a system of record. Having a CRM system or some form of database that you can input all of your interactions with journalists and other key stakeholders that you're engaging with on behalf of your client, so you can then see what's worked historically, what hasn't, how many times this week or this month have we pitched that media outlet, that journalist, that whatever, and how successful have we been? I looked up one of our so we use HubSpot, but there are other, and we've had to bespoke it quite a lot to deliver what we want. But there are other like off-the-shelf systems you can buy, like Muckrack and Propel and things like that. But I looked on a publication the other day, and I could see at a click how many times we pitched them, how many journalists we pitched there, and how successful we'd been with one journalist versus another journalist. And then that made me think, okay, well, if we need to get title coverage for our client in that publication, probably best approach the journalists we've had more success with historically, because they know who we are, we've placed stories with them previously, all the rest of it. So at a very simple granular level, that's the benefit of, you know, using data and to inform strategy and tactics for clients.
That's great. Thank you, Daryl. You just reminded me that kind of, so last year we did our big global purpose relations, did its big global Comtech report, where we kind of surveyed people, PR people around the world about how they use technology and AI. And it was quite interesting that PR people on the whole rated themselves quite highly, and said they had a good understanding and use of technology. But then they also said they used a spreadsheet to monitor their interaction with journalists. And you just go, oh, seriously, people? But
couldn't agree with more.
Yeah, that's the world we're in. Okay, so what I think the next kind of point is to probably bring in Clarissa again. Just I was going to ask you to kind of talk about kind of a little bit about crisis comms, but also I think Mary Beth made an interesting point about kind of, she didn't use this phrase, but the need for companies to walk the talk, that they've actually got to be seen to have that purpose and be doing it rather than just saying it. So it'd be quite interesting to kind of hear your thoughts on kind of, you know, kind of crisis issues and purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stuart, and hello to all. crisis is a very dangerous word to use in an environment where we have seismic changes taking place. And I think the word that I like to use rather are emerging situations. Because crisis is thrown a lot in our discipline and in our field and in our daily lives. And we almost have to customize that into what is this emerging situation and what does that then require. With regards to the second part of your question, how we utilize our tools and to walk the talk in the company with regards to it, we need to remember that the rules remain the same. The tools have changed, but at the end, the rules remain the same. Daryl had said it so beautifully when he spoke about the human engagement with these tools and how we actually, not just have data, but create the insights. We're past the 4IR. It is not a digital age. Our human journey in terms of development has gone analog dialogue, and now we're at a cognitive age. And this is where we are in our practice, is in that cognitive age, we now need to walk that talk. And we now need to realize that that cognitive age requires, in this, let's call it crisis, but emerging situation, how are we thinking and using what we have strategically and in a conscious way? And like one of our previous speakers said, with the LLM systems, etc., how we are integrating that. So not just applying the technology, but understanding in that crisis the humans that we're engaging with, and that we're interacting with those humans within a specific context. And we're not using those platforms as generic tools or putting an instruction into an AI tool, but we are rather using it strategically to our advantage. Because if we talk about AI, it mimics human cognition. And if we talk about the cognitive age, this is where we're at. So, if we're looking at that crisis situation, are we as communication professionals understanding our role in crafting a strategic solution that is authentic to who we are as a business in terms of our purpose, and that resonates with what is needed at this point in time, but more importantly, that it actually speaks to the stakeholders and solves the problem efficiently. So yes, that's how I think we should and could walk the talk in terms of emerging situations and using digital platforms in those contexts.
That's brilliant, thank you. I particularly kind of like the point about kind of meeting those needs of stakeholders, because one of my kind of and the fact that it's so often it's not a crisis. I talk about issues. And so often, I always get amused when you see crisis communication awards, PR awards for crisis communications, because by and large, that means it's failed. Because actually, the best crisis comms work I've ever done, nobody ever knows about it because we contained an issue. And I'm never going to win any awards for work that didn't become public. So that I'm going to bring in kind of Mayan next, just to talk a little bit about more about online reputation management, but also looking at some of the what the role of social media and digital platforms play in modern PR.
Yes, we have no doubt that the social media and digital platform has transformed the landscape of PR. It has the direct impact on our public relation activity. It impacts any organization in the way they reach out to the target audience, reputation management, or brand awareness building. So to my point of view, I think that social media allows PR professionals to reach larger scale of target audience. And it can help us to try fostering the two-way communication with instinct responses. It is really different in the past for the traditional media. Social media and the diversify and multiple digital platforms help us to do that. And it's a real-time communication. Second, social media also a powerful tools for sharing engaging content, including text, images, video. And you also remember that with the 3F model, earn, paid media, now we have share media, and social media will help us to push up for share media. Cooperating with social media influencer also can amplify the brand's messages. And social media platform also provide us valuable data and analytics. So it allows PR professionals to measure our campaign's effectiveness. So in the future, from my point of view, social media will also evolving more, and there will be a race of niche media, such as podcasts, such as audiobooks, which brands or enterprises can utilize to reach out larger scale of target audience. Besides that, with the very emerging and evolving social media, it means that authenticity and transparency are the very two main things brands need to focus. We walk the talk. And authenticity is very important things. Besides that, with the integration of AI, many people also talk about AI and automation, but it also brings us some challenges, some obstacles about data privacy, about deepfake, about potential misuse of social media. So AI, automation, and other digital platform and digital tools can bring us more opportunity to optimize costs and the efforts, but it will bring more challenge and obstacle. So as the technology evolves, I think each a PR professional like us will need to navigate an ethnic concern as well surrounding that problem. But there's no deny that social media and digital platform continue to be an indispensable part for PR landscape, and by staying informed with latest trends or the innovation, PR professional can leverage those powerful tools to reach their target audience and also to achieve our communication goals. That's some of my sharings.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Some kind of really interesting points. I think kind of one of my kind of frustrations on this is often that this kind of almost artificial divide between kind of social media and kind of traditional media or media relations, because that's something from our perspective as communicators, from the stakeholder or the audience perspective, it's just a piece of content that they're consuming. It's just a story, it's just a video. And I think they're less hung up on kind of the platform or the channel than a lot of us are as communicators. So next I wanted to kind of bring in Laura. And just to, well, we've got down here kind of tips for audience engagement and brand building in the digital space, which is very specific.
Stuart,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I am running out of battery on my phone. It's sinking deeply. I've got about 8% left. Just
No worries.
so you know.
Right, Laura, if you don't mind, we'll get Imogen to go
Absolutely,
first.
no problem.
So
no problem
sorry,
at all.
Laura. So sorry. Apologies.
So yeah, so I was going to kind of ask you, because you've got your sort of kind of the source of data on kind of PR, and you look at all these insights, etc. Obviously, one of the big drivers and the big talking points and really important issues at the moment is kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I just wondered kind of what your perspectives on that were in terms of modern PR.
Thank you, and hello again to everyone. I think a couple of things. One of the first things I think is how important it is to actually find out the truth. And equally with that is how you go about finding out the truth. We recently ran a pulse which looked to measure what CEOs of PR agencies thought of their own cultures in terms of having a speak up culture, versus what the junior to middle level managers thought of the agencies that they work with and whether they do actually nurture a speak up culture. And it was so interesting because over 60% of the CEOs said, yep, we've got this nailed. We've got a really open culture. Everybody feels they can put their hand up, or the majority feel like they can put their hand up when something is amiss. But then when you balance that against what the junior to middle level manager said, it was only 30%, which says to me that we have a challenge in terms of how we get people to say what they think, because they don't want any repercussions. And I think that links with the crisis piece we've already talked about. You know, Mary Beth mentioned sort of starting from a point whereby you've got a clear view of all the facts in front of you. I think if you begin from a basis of knowing what people really believe, you'll plan and communicate far more effectively. And the other piece of value, I think, in that is when you go out to, say, a group of CEOs and or a group of junior to middle level managers, we've actually branded this project, this part of our product, Future Voices, because we think that the middle tier of management in the PR and comms industries just has a wealth of knowledge and insight to share. Is you can go out and you can ask them a question, and then you can share the results with them so they get to see what their peers are thinking, which provides another layer of ownership, another layer of responsibility, another layer of input and perspective and points of view, because the more we can drive and nurture that healthy, open, honest conversation, the better we'll be as individuals, the better we'll perform as practitioners, and the happier the places that and the agencies that these people work in will be. And that surely has to be a big thing. I don't know if that answers your question. It's sort of ticks the box on one level.
No, I think it does. And I think the bit that kind of particularly resonated with me is when you talked about that kind of mid-level and kind of the future leaders, because I think there's so much opportunity for leaders to learn off them. And I'm always kind of astounded when we're working with clients, whether it's kind of in-house or agency, at just the ideas and the kind of the talent that actually is in there in the industry. So yeah, really good points. So hopefully your battery doesn't totally die.
No, I'm going to stay with you to the end.
Brilliant. Okay, so Laura, over to you.
So when I got this question that you were saying, very specific question about content or about strategies to leverage your digital voice, I thought, it's sort of like, am I the person who should be saying this? But then I thought about it, and from the customer side. So when we were looking for a public relations specialist to help us with different authors, et cetera, there are actually, one of the things I look for is whether or not the company we work with actually walks the talk, as you mentioned before, Stuart. And that's, there are very specific things that I tend to look for in how they actually work with their own company. There's an expression in German about, the Schuster, so the shoemakers' children have the worst shoes, but we also have to make sure that our own companies actually reflect the kind of public relations we want, or the kind of online strategies that we actually want to help our customers have. And I actually made, so in the chat, I just put a document that everyone can access with 10 of the things that, in reflecting on this, 10 of the things that I look for when we're looking for public relations specialists. And a couple of things, so things as my aunt said about consistency and authenticity in the communications is very, very important, or being able to have interactive content. Being able to help our clients and use polls or question and Q&A sessions, challenges, et cetera, to be really to be able to help them get their word out there, storytelling, all of that. What we're noticing, or what I'm noticing, positive and negative, with the AI, since we've been talking about this today, one of the companies we work with uses AI to, in my opinion, not yet effectively, to both post for their clients, to try to recreate the voice of the client online. It is not as effective as I believe it should be. And the other thing they're using is AI video, so that they basically record video of the clients to be able to create videos from the client for their customers. So in other words, you do an avatar type video of me, and then I'm speaking about another subject when I'm speaking to the customer, et cetera, although I'm not actually actively doing that. And again, I think we have to be very careful with all of that, because it always comes down to the authenticity, and it comes down to if you're really speaking in the voice of the person or not. The other aspect where I'm seeing that AI is being used is in sending out press releases to different news outlets to be able to create different types. And that's actually been a very effective. So that's in the positive sense, effective use. And that's basically to send out to different outlets with different medium. So basically creating from one press release a video, creating an audio to send out to radio and podcast outlets, creating then obviously articles, etc. from that one small amount of information. Again, you always have to be careful that it really is in the voice of the customer. You have to be careful about transparency. A lot of the things we've already spoken about today. So those are just some of the observations that I've had in working with our PR specialists.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially kind of, it's fascinating to kind of hear the other side, and kind of what people are actually looking for, especially in terms of kind of, you know, some of the AI examples you've seen. And I think kind of one of the things is that that I'm always kind of pointing out to our clients is the kind of the AI that we're using at the moment is the worst it's ever going to be. So yes, it doesn't do some of the things it's claimed to do at the moment. That doesn't mean to say it won't do it within the next few months or the next few years, because I think it absolutely will do all of these things as we learn how to use it better and the kind of large language models get improved and everything else gets improved. Okay, so I'm just conscious of the time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Stu. Thank you, all the other participants. Quite interesting, and really appreciate. Of course, there might be questions or discussions afterwards on the email here, of course, at the chat room. But I would like now to, if possible, to give the floor to Tabisile Fumo, our dear ex-co-member, and she has very strong panel. Raina, Shannon, Catherine, Craig. Tabisile, it's you.
Good afternoon and good morning. Thank you so much. In this panel, obviously, we'll be looking at issues of ethics, trust, transparency within the context of AI. Technological advances are driving the changes in our profession, and today, our panel will be unpacking the dynamics and insights around this topic. So it is my pleasure to welcome our panel, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves before we get into the meat of the discussion. So if I can introduce Raina Lazarova, if you can please introduce yourself, followed by Dr. Shannon and Catherine and Dr. Craig.
Thank you so much. And thanks to you and Maxim for hosting this event and this panel. My name is Raina Lazarova, and I'm co-founder of RuPoint, a media monitoring, comms measurement, and insights company. We help communication professionals measure and demonstrate the value of their work. I'm also the new chair of AMEC, the International Association for Measurement and Evaluation of Communication, which is an industry body as well as a community uniting agencies, practitioners, media intelligence companies, and technology providers to the PR profession.
Thank you so much, Raina. Dr. Shannon, all the way from the US.
Hi, can everyone hear me? I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here and see some friends as well as new faces. And so I am the founder and executive director of the Global Strategic Communication Consortium, and we study ethics and futurism. We have an AI ethics advisory board. I was just doing some training on that for the state government of South Carolina for the past 2 days. It's been wonderful. And I am also a faculty member at the University of South Carolina, where I'm a professor in the College of Information, as well as faculty at the Artificial Intelligence Institute. So I'm going to talk about AI and ethics and throw some pretty challenging ideas at you. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. All the way from Canada, Catherine.
Yes, hi. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here as well. So my name is Catherine Fazette. I'm a consultant in communication, PR, and reputation management. I founded my own firm, Les Incorrigibles, 2 years ago. And before that, I was in the corporate world for about 20 years. I'm also a speaker at some conferences. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And over to you, Dr. Craig, all the way from the US as well.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody here. I'm Craig Fleischer. I'm I don't know, many-year academic. I'm these days more of a pracademic. I've spent about an even amount of time in academia as a former business school dean and MBA professor who's doing mostly research. And I write a lot. You'll find a few of my books if you'll just look me up on Amazon or Google Scholar. And these days, I'm a professor over in the Institute of Health and Equity at the Medical College of Wisconsin, where I develop courses for them and help lead our students' research in health equity issues.
Thank you so much. With this esteemed panel, I'm actually not going to get in your way, but starting with you, Raina, how can data-driven insights inform comm strategies while effectively upholding their ethical standards?
Yeah, I mean, before I get to the ethical element of it, I guess it's important to mention that when it comes to data and how data can be used to inform comms decisions, we have this dichotomy now where we have access to more data than any other generation before us, and yet we're using very little of it, or we're failing to use data in a meaningful way. So this creates many challenges, but to highlight two of them, number one is we're pumping out data at a higher speed than ever before. And this is a trend that has been accelerated by the advent of generative AI. Attention spans of our audiences are getting smaller. We have less and less time, but the kind of sheer volume of data that we see, that we're exposed to on a daily basis is greater than ever before. And the challenge for communicators in this kind of data sea is how to communicate effectively and how to reach our target audiences who have less time to listen to us. So a lot of data and trickier than ever before. It's messier, it's loud out there, it gets trickier to communicate effectively our messages to our target audiences. And the second challenge I want to highlight is that we have access to more and more unstructured data from our target audiences, but we are not using it accordingly. And when we do use it, we don't always have the right tool set to process the data so that we can inform decision-making accordingly. Or we're using subsets of the data independently and not taking into account bias of certain medium, and therefore, sometimes we draw wrong conclusions based on subsets of the data. So huge data sets, a lot of the data is unstructured, and lack of access to tool sets or just inability to kind of comprehend or interpret the data, making it even more difficult for us to find our way. So to tackle the latter issue, we all need to use a media monitoring tool of some set, and that was mentioned in the previous panels as well. A set of tools and services who have the right technology, as well as access to content. So we talked about the tech stack a lot, about generative AI, about the tools we can use, but these tools need to be fed the right data, and they need to be, the data needs to be sourced accordingly, compliantly, following copyright body restrictions, as well as publisher relationships, which need to be respected and established to get access to that content. So to kind of get to the topic of ethics, it is becoming increasingly important for us when handling the different data sets to focus on how we treat data, especially when we use generative AI and other large language models. So I'll look at the data in two kind of subsets. One is primary data and the other one is secondary data. So a good example of primary data is any data provided by your customers that is private to them. And so applying high standards of data privacy when using that data and following explicit permission from your customers is a number one priority here. So whatever you want to do with that data, you need to agree the rules and terms and conditions with your client. And the biggest risk here is the temptation for us and also colleagues in our companies who work for us to push that data to large language models. So that's obviously very tricky in terms of once the data is out there, everyone can potentially kind of get the insights from the data. So some of the companies we work with, for example, are in the healthcare sector, medical device companies. So a lot of the healthcare data that they work with is very, very private. So we can't be pushing that data outside of private instances of generative AI or large language models that we have. And the second aspect with regards to secondary data, in the domain we work with, within communications, typically the source of that data is media. So it will be content and data owned by media publishers, by media outlets. And again, in that respect, certain copyright requirements apply depending on either the geography or in some cases in line with individual publishers' licensing agreements. And so you probably all know recently, or since the kind of last 18 months since the OpenAI published the public version of ChatGPT, some publishers are starting to sign agreements with OpenAI and other generative AI companies, which allow them to use their content in a copyright compliant way to train large language models, leaving aside the fact that those companies have already used all the data. It's kind of more retrospectively trying to claw back some revenue, I guess is my interpretation. So amongst those publishers, we have companies like AP, News Corp, Axel Springer, the FT, most recently here in the UK. So for all of those, the arrangement between them and the large language models from a kind of copyright ethical perspective are agreed. But however, there are publishers who haven't agreed what they want AI companies to do or how they want to treat their data. And so we always need to keep that in mind when we deal with third-party data. And again, pushing that data into large language model is still a gray area. And I think we should exercise a high degree of caution to make sure that we don't expose ourselves, but also, more importantly, we don't expose our clients to any copyright or data privacy risks.
No, thank you for that. I mean, you're raising critical points around how to play by the rules in terms of licensing and privacy. I think that the key issue that you raise is this proliferation of data and data discernment that is required for us to be able to process data, be it fake, be it real, or whatever the case may be, in a responsible way. And maybe this is what I then want to move on to Professor Shannon, to just ask, in all this maze, and AI getting into the mix, from your perspective, from the Artificial Intelligence Institute, what do you think are the things as PR professionals we need to be looking for to enable trust, transparency, and make sure that we operate in an ethical way?
Well, thank you so much. I could go on this question for a very long time, so I'm cognizant of I only have a few minutes, so I'll do my best to summarize really quickly. And I do want to say the keynote this morning was fantastic. I love the fact that he pointed out we're a little bit slow on the adaptation of technology in public relations. I think that's a very real and true point, which is one reason that I became a futurist and started studying futurism many years ago, because I didn't really see our industry adapting. And when we do adapt, I'm afraid we're adapting to the wrong thing. As a couple of other speakers have already mentioned, everybody's so focused on generative AI. I mean, in our College of Journalism, all they talk about is generative AI. That's not really what I want to use as a public relations professional. As several other people have said, we're great writers. Why would we want to give away the thing that we're good at and we enjoy? Why don't we use it for something that helps advance our cause, our field, our analytics, our data, our measurement, and understand our reach of what we're doing, as well as the issues that we're addressing. So when we talk about AI and ethics, we have a lot of things to be concerned about with that data. And I'm lucky that because of a co-author, I can present in 2 conferences in one day. So right now I'm also presenting, thanks to my co-author, at the Comparative Agendas Conference in Barcelona, where we're talking about trying to create an ethical way for issues management to use metadata and big data, which are AI generated forms of information scraping. You have a lot of issues with privacy, with rights, with bias, especially when you start to use invasive forms of technologies like medical data that's obtained in large-scale modeling to identify cancer, for example. Patients' names and social security numbers and blood types are often mixed in with your data. And I'll leave that to Craig, actually, to talk about. But this is a very concerning thing when you're analyzing data in terms of ethics. And so I'll just say that I have been working with developers to incorporate ethical ideals into artificial intelligence. And this is a really difficult area for ethics because, of course, as moral philosophers, we talk about values and belief systems, ethical standards, and moral principles. However, the good news is deontological philosophy is a rationalist-based philosophy. That's what I specialize in. And so an algorithm can understand a rationalist-based philosophy. So when we're talking about Immanuel Kant and deontology and his 3 forms of the categorical imperative, which can be summarized as duty to moral principle, dignity and respect for all of our involved stakeholders and publics, including a dialogue with them, and acting with good intention, this is something that we are trying to mathematically model for artificial intelligence. And it's a lot easier for a rationalist philosophy than it would be a Humean philosophy based on emotion or feeling, or a Mill type of philosophy based on predicting future outcomes and consequences. So we've had a little bit of success in getting this into AI in a very experimental way. But when we think about public relations and communicators using data, this is where we have to think about these standards for ourselves and how we use that data, as well as how that data is constructed. For example, if you think about good data in means good data out, I can give you many bad examples of where ethical standards were not applied. So let's think about the Boeing 737 MAX rollout using artificial intelligence. The MAX system was supposed to use AI to help these airplanes deal with aggressive turbulence and wind shear conditions. However, Boeing did not use any ethical standards when they constructed this AI. They did not involve questioning the people who would actually use it, meaning the pilots. They looked at it from a technical perspective. So by not including ethics and dialogue and moral principle to do what their moral duty was, including dignity and respect for the end users, the pilots, the people who would be on the airplanes, but especially the pilots, there was no human override or control of this AI system. So we all know, everyone who has seen the media stories know that 346 fatalities occurred because there was no ethical override, there was no ethical oversight in Boeing's design of this AI. So the pilots lost control of the planes and were powerless to watch the 2 planes nosedive when the AI malfunctioned. This is patently unethical. And this is a great example of why we need moral philosophy, specifically deontology and AI oversight, development, as well as our data use. We need to think about moral principle to do the right thing, dignity and respect, how our publics would like to be involved and represented, and act with intention or integrity and goodwill in how we're using that data in our communications programs. So thank you so much for the time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, if you can put your questions in the chat, and I think, Prof, you are raising quite critical issues because there's a lot of self-regulation at this point, and not everyone is operating within the confines of the standards that hopefully in future we can all agree to, and put the human back into the system, because that's ultimately why I believe some of these technologies were invented to improve the quality of life of people. But moving on, Catherine, I mean, what are the data and metrics that we need to then, therefore, on the basis of what we've heard thus far, use in our PR strategies?
So thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with what's been said so far on data, the need for reliable data, the one that complies with the most stringent privacy laws, and the ones that are ethical. But there's something else that I want to bring to the table here. It's about how representative that data is of the audiences that we actually speak to or want to address. And the problem with most AI tools, as we know today, because of machine learning, they tend to be heavily biased, right? And not show a full representation, the sample of people that they're targeting. So the results that they generate, or the metrics that we use and rely on to inform decisions, might not be taking account of the full spectrum of individuals we're targeting. So there's a host of other factors we can consider when we're measuring, and that can always be helped by AI, but not generated by AI. So one of the areas that I've looked into over the past years is timing, the impact of timing in communication. So profoundly impactful when it comes, I see Craig just maybe yeah, okay, thank you. So timing being an area at the junction of behavioral psychology, and has many applications in corporate communication, amongst others. And what we find is that the audience provides a lot of clues into how it thinks, how it sees the world, how it behaves. And we can consider, when we're measuring, that the audience is a one-size-fits-all, and it fits into one single box. How much as we want to label them, we can't do that. So timing is one factor we should look at. Cognitive biases, so that was brought up earlier with the cognitive age. And again, very, very large variation in how people react to different things. This needs to be accounted for in what we measure. And then bring on different topic about diversity, neurodiversity for one thing, also influence how people react. So measurements, and aided by AI or not, should take into account the context, and the landscape is changing because, as been said earlier, more data, more noise, lesser attention span, more misinformation and disinformation, and an overall disengagement and apathy that I think we need to fight. And I'm not sure that the tools that are being used by the general population right now, more in some areas, in some cities, and in some countries and in others, are fully representative of the challenge that we face as a field. So I think we need to remain very ethical. The Barcelona principles just evoke this very nicely. And we need to flex our measurement muscle a lot more collectively in the future, regardless of the facets of communication we're covering. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Catherine. It's so poignant, because earlier we were told we may be adopting the wrong things in the quest to be ahead of the time and catch up with the time. But I think you also then raise a critical point, which I would love Prof. Craig to actually reflect on. How do you engage or manage stakeholders ethically using AI? Dr. Craig?
I think there's a number of ways, and I think a lot of this really comes back to doing what we call aligning what I've described as the 4 sets. And I'll just briefly walk us through that. It'll take me 2 minutes or less. But the 4 sets are as follows. It starts with mindsets. And I've heard all of these discussed throughout the sessions, all the sessions going all the way back to Paul's original session, the keynoter this morning. The mindsets are how we think about everything, you know, our context. It's about assumptions and biases and prejudices. It's about planning and strategizing. It's about decision-making and choice. It's about ethical kinds of considerations. So it starts with the mindsets. It goes to the skill sets next. skill sets are something, again, I've heard numerous times this morning, and I'll just make note of a couple of them that came up. Skill sets are about things like understanding generative AI. Data science is a skill set that I think PR people and professionals would do, again, a world of good to master. And the one that's come up in our session already, again, moral philosophy as a skill set. Critical, essential, and central to so much of what we do in terms of trying to take those mindsets and convert them through our skill sets into activities and programs that, that we can roll out there. The third one is tool sets. Of course, we have had no shortage of conversation around tool sets today. I won't belabor that, needless to say, but there's lots of tool sets that we use, and we actually need those tool sets. They help us not only to be more productive, i.e. effective and efficient, but also more efficacious, getting to the ethical side of what we do. And then getting the last set, which are data sets. And again, even just now, we've been talking about data sets, the importance of having good, valid, unprejudiced, unbiased data. And here again, that's one of the reasons we need a skill set like data science and being able to master at least the basics of it. We don't need to be data scientists, but as PR people and communication pros, we do need to have enough mastery to know that we've been able to filter out the misinformation, the disinformation, all that. You can combine that as false information that is so ubiquitous today. So trying to achieve alignment between your mindsets, your skill sets, your tool sets, and then your data sets is critical. And I do this with lots of workshops and presentations and corporate organizations that I've been working with. And it's really rare. I'll just note for the record, even as recently as this month, I have not found an organization that has what we call tight alignment between those four sets. It just doesn't exist. There's lots of gaps. And so the goal I see for us as PR leaders and communication leaders is to close those gaps between all of those four sets.
Thank you so much, Prof. I mean, you're raising very pertinent point, and I'm sitting here as a PR person. I'm like, data science, what? Let me quickly go figure what that is and make sure that we incorporate some of these things in the body of knowledge as we are training more on new PR people, bringing issues of moral philosophy, data discernment, tool sets, but making sure that we've got the right tool sets to be able to inculcate the culture of trust and transparency in how we adopt this technology going forward. As they always say, time is the thief of fun. I'm going to have to cut our panel right there. There's a lot of discussions to be had. And as I see in the chats, there's a lot of emails being exchanged. I think from this panel's point of view, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to give us your insights, but I'm inviting us to continue this conversation in other platforms so that we can share the knowledge that was imparted today. So on that note, and in the interest of time, I'm going to hand back over to Maxime.
Thank you very much, Tobisile. 20 minutes delay for a public relations summit, it's quite an achievement, because usually both in our eco summits or in the Davos summit, usually we prolong it for hours and hours. But I would like especially to thank Paul Holmes. Our opening speech was really quite interesting, and also to the moderators, to Mikolas, to Stuart, Tobisile, and what can I say? We can, of course, continue this conversation hours and hours. I would like also to congratulate my compatriot, Rainer, for the election to be the president of AMEC for the next 2 years. And it's, well, we are proud also because Rainer is very close to WCFA, and we hope to meet you also next year in the beautiful resort of Davos. And I would like to congratulate all of you guys being with us today, because what can I say? It's beautiful to meet each other in person. It's wonderful to have gala dinner in Davos. It's amazing to have interactions and networking, to exchange business cards or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's also very beneficial and very useful to have all those discussions today online, because we will have it online. We will have it. We are recording this. Very soon it will be on the website. I would like to appeal the ones who are not WCFA members to become our full members. We will announce very soon an open procedure to nominate people who you think might be very useful for our advisory board, to nominate them for the advisory board, and we would like to have also new members. And whatever you need that we can clarify, this is just the start of our discussion. We can continue on Facebook, we can continue on Twitter, of course. There will be a lot of tweets after these sessions. We can continue on LinkedIn, pictures, quotations. Our executive director, Jessica, who I would like to congratulate for the excellent management of the forum in between the summits and also during the summit, will take care. So we will have a lot of tweets, a lot of posts on LinkedIn. And whatever you have any questions, I'm the easiest person to be found on social media. I can reply 24/7 and I can discuss with you. And the only thing I cannot do, because we are online, to embrace all of you, because it's very easy in Davos, in the Congress Hotel, to make selfies, all of us, or to embrace you or to have a drink. We will do it next year. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you.